Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you about love, not the romanticized version that we often see in movies or hear about in songs, but the real, raw, and sometimes messy love that we are all worthy of. You see, I believe that we are all born for connection. It's in our DNA. We crave it. We long for it. But somewhere along the way, we start to settle for less than what we deserve. We settle for love that's half-hearted, half authentic, and half committed. We allow ourselves to be loved only in pieces, and in turn, we give only parts of ourselves. Wholeheartedness is not just a concept, it is a way of living. It's the courage to show up as our full selves, to embrace who we truly are with all of our strengths and vulnerabilities, and to engage with the world from a place of authenticity and connection. At its core, wholeheartedness is about living with intention, embracing imperfection, and opening ourselves up to deep, meaningful relationships both with ourselves and others. For too long, we have been conditioned to believe that we must be perfect in order to be loved or accepted. We've been taught to hide our flaws, conceal our vulnerabilities, and put on a mask to fit in. It's easy to believe that only the parts of ourselves that meet a certain standard are worthy of attention and care. But this belief is one of the greatest barriers to genuine connection and fulfillment. Wholeheartedness demands that we reject these false ideals and step into a more authentic way of being. To live wholeheartedly is to show up with all that we are, our successes, our failures, our fears, and our hopes. It means being present in our lives without reservation or hesitation. It is an act of bravery because it asks us to be seen fully, to share our deepest truths, and to allow ourselves to be vulnerable with others. And yet vulnerability is often the very thing we fear most. We worry that if we reveal too much of ourselves, we will be judged, rejected, or hurt. But the reality is that vulnerability is not a weakness. It is a strength, a power that allows us to create connections that are deep, meaningful, and lasting. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we are not only showing others who we truly are, but we are also giving them permission to do the same. This is the foundation of wholehearted living, embracing vulnerability and authenticity as the key ingredients to meaningful relationships. In a world that often values perfection and control, wholeheartedness requires us to lean into the messiness of life. It means letting go of the illusion that we can be in control of everything and accepting that uncertainty and discomfort are inevitable parts of the human experience. When we embrace the uncertainty, we free ourselves from the pressure to be perfect and begin to appreciate the beauty of our imperfections. Wholeheartedness asks us to be kinder to ourselves, to recognize that we don't have to have it all figured out to be worthy of love, acceptance, or success. Wholeheartedness also challenges us to face the shame that so many of us carry. Shame tells us that we are not enough, that we are unworthy of love and connection because of our mistakes, our shortcomings, or our perceived flaws. It keeps us stuck in self-doubt and fear. But to live wholeheartedly is to confront that shame and refuse to let it define us. It's about stepping into our power, acknowledging our worth, and embracing the idea that we are enough, exactly as we are. One of the most powerful aspects of wholeheartedness is its ability to transform our relationships. When we live wholeheartedly, we stop pretending to be someone we are not, and we start building connections based on trust, honesty, and openness. These relationships are not built on perfection or expectations, they are built on acceptance and understanding. Wholehearted living requires that we allow others to see us for who we truly are, and in return, we learn to see others in the same way. We stop comparing ourselves to others and begin to celebrate the uniqueness of each person we encounter. Living wholeheartedly also means making choices that align with our values and our authentic selves. It's easy to fall into the trap of living according to external expectations or societal pressures. We may feel compelled to pursue a career, relationship, or lifestyle that looks good on paper, but doesn't truly resonate with who we are at our core. Wholeheartedness requires that we listen to our inner voice, that we make decisions that honor our values, and that we trust ourselves enough to walk our own path. When we are true to ourselves, we find that life becomes more fulfilling, more meaningful, and more aligned with our deepest desires. But wholeheartedness is not a destination, it is a lifelong practice. It is something that we must commit to every day. We will inevitably face moments of self-doubt, fear, and insecurity. There will be times when we want to hide, when we feel like we are not enough, and when we want to retreat into the safety of perfectionism. But it is in these moments that we must return to the practice of wholehearted living. It is in these moments that we must remind ourselves that we are worthy, that we are enough, and that we deserve to live fully, authentically, and unapologetically. Wholeheartedness requires us to embrace discomfort. It asks us to step outside our comfort zones and face the challenges that come with being true to ourselves. But it also offers us the rewards of deeper connection, personal growth, and a sense of fulfillment that comes from living with purpose and intention. When we choose to live wholeheartedly, we choose to embrace the full spectrum of human experience, the joy and the pain, the success and the failure, the love and the loss. In doing so, we open ourselves up to the richness of life and all the growth that comes with it. At its heart, wholeheartedness is about connection with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us. It is the ability to stand in our truth, to let go of the masks and the facades, and to show up as we are. It is about living with courage, compassion, and authenticity, and choosing to love ourselves and others in all of our imperfections. Wholehearted living is not easy, but it is the only path to true freedom and joy. It is the path that leads to the life we were always meant to live. Love is one of the most powerful forces in the world. It connects us, shapes us, and drives us to be better versions of ourselves. But in our society, there is a subtle but dangerous trend settling for half love. Half love is when we, or the people around us, offer only parts of ourselves in relationships love that's incomplete, conditional, and often rooted in fear rather than truth. It can be tempting to accept this kind of love because it feels safer, easier, or more comfortable. But the danger of half love is that it keeps us from experiencing the depth and authenticity of connection that we truly crave. At its core, half love is transactional. It's love that comes with strings attached, where you give a little, but only because you expect something in return. It is love that thrives on conditions: I will love you if, or I'll only show up for you when. Half love is not about showing up for one another unconditionally. Instead, it's about bartering pieces of yourself, holding back, or offering only what you think the other person can handle. This kind of love doesn't allow for vulnerability, depth, or real intimacy. Instead, it thrives on fear, inadequacy, and self-protection. The biggest danger of half love is that it reinforces the belief that we are not worthy of full, unconditional love. When we receive only part of someone's heart, we begin to believe that perhaps we are only deserving of partial affection. We start to think that we have to earn someone's love, that we are only lovable when we meet certain conditions or expectations. This mindset creates a cycle of insecurity where love becomes a transaction rather than a gift. We start to measure our worth by how much love we can get, how much we can get, how much we can give, or how much we can control. We lose sight of the fact that love is not a commodity to be exchanged. It is a force that flows freely, without judgment or reservation. This type of conditional love can also prevent us from developing healthy boundaries. When we are not receiving full love, we may overextend ourselves in an effort to earn affection, approval, or validation. We might sacrifice our needs, our time, or our well-being to gain someone else's approval, believing that only by doing so will we be worthy of their love. In doing this, we end up losing ourselves. We begin to chase after the illusion of love, offering more of ourselves in hopes of receiving what we think we need. But this cycle never ends because half love is never enough. No matter how much we give, it will never fill the hole inside us that craves deep, wholehearted connection. Half love also leads to disconnection. When we offer only parts of ourselves, we aren't allowing others to truly see who we are. We hide behind masks, pretending to be someone we are not, or we give just enough to keep the relationship afloat but never truly engage. In relationships where half love is present, there's a constant distance, a lack of trust, intimacy, and authenticity. We may think we are protecting ourselves by keeping certain parts of our identity, our needs, or our emotions hidden, but in reality, we are pushing the other person away. We are creating a barrier that prevents true connection from forming. This disconnection doesn't just exist between individuals, it can also be internal. When we accept half love from others, we begin to offer half love to ourselves. We hold back parts of who we are, telling ourselves that certain aspects of ourselves are not worthy of love or attention. We become disconnected from our own needs, desires, and emotions. We may prioritize what others want or need, putting ourselves on the back burner. In doing so, we neglect the most important relationship we will ever have, the one we have with ourselves. The danger of half-love is that it teaches us to ignore or reject parts of ourselves in favor of what we think others will accept. But true self-love requires that we embrace all of who we are, including our flaws and imperfections. Half-love also keeps us trapped in relationships that are not aligned with our values or our needs. It can be easy to settle for love that feels safe or familiar, even if it doesn't fully meet our emotional or psychological needs. We may fear being alone or believe that we don't deserve more, so we convince ourselves that partial affection is enough. Over time, this kind of love creates a sense of emptiness as we begin to feel unseen and unheard. We may continue to stay in relationships that don't nourish us because we believe that any love is better than no love at all. But by doing this, we rob ourselves of the possibility of a deeper, more fulfilling connection. We stay stuck in relationships that perpetuate half-love, never allowing ourselves the chance to experience the fullness of love and belonging that we deserve. The impact of half-love also extends beyond romantic relationships. In friendships, family dynamics, and even professional relationships, when we give only parts of ourselves, we prevent true connection and growth. We may avoid difficult conversations, avoid setting healthy boundaries, or avoid showing vulnerability because we fear rejection or judgment. But when we operate from this place of half-love, we create shallow relationships where authenticity and trust are missing. These relationships can leave us feeling drained, isolated, and unfulfilled. One of the most powerful truths about love is that it requires vulnerability. Vulnerability is the willingness to be seen fully, to share not just the parts of ourselves that are easy to love, but also the parts that we fear others will reject. It's the courage to step into the unknown and be loved, not for who we pretend to be, but for who we truly are. Half-love, by its nature, avoids vulnerability. It keeps us guarded, playing it safe, and only revealing what we think others will accept. But real love can only thrive when we are willing to be vulnerable, to give and receive love without conditions, and to show up fully for each other. Half-love keeps us from experiencing the fullness of life and the depth of connection that we are capable of. It limits our ability to grow, to heal, and to love ourselves and others deeply. The danger of half-love is that it convinces us that partial affection is enough, that we should settle for less than we deserve, and that our true selves are not worthy of full, unconditional love. But we are worthy of whole love, the kind of love that is authentic, unconditional, and free of fear. It is this kind of love that leads to true belonging and connection, and it is the only kind of love that can truly heal us. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. In a world that prizes strength, resilience, and perfection, vulnerability is often seen as a weakness or something to be avoided. It's commonly equated with exposure or fragility, and many of us fear being vulnerable because we associate it with being hurt, rejected, or abandoned. However, vulnerability is the very essence of authentic connection and the pathway to true love. To love fully, to experience the kind of deep, transformative relationships we all desire, we must first have the courage to be vulnerable. At its core, vulnerability is about being seen. It is allowing ourselves to show up as we truly are, without masks, without pretenses, and without the layers of protection we typically hide behind. It's about opening our hearts and minds to others, allowing them to witness our most authentic selves, including our imperfections, our fears, and our deepest desires. Vulnerability is not about weakness, it is an act of strength, courage, and trust. When we choose to be vulnerable, we are choosing to embrace who we are without apologies. In relationships, vulnerability is the gateway to real intimacy. Intimacy is not just about physical closeness, it is the emotional, mental, and spiritual closeness that comes from sharing our true selves with another person. When we are vulnerable, we create a space where others feel safe to do the same. Vulnerability fosters trust. It says, I trust you enough to show you who I really am, and in turn, it invites the other person to trust us with their own truths. Without vulnerability, relationships remain shallow, guarded, and distant. There is no true connection because we are only sharing the surface, what we think the other person wants to see, rather than the parts of ourselves that make us whole. One of the greatest barriers to vulnerability is the fear of rejection. We are often afraid that if we show someone who we truly are, we will not be accepted, loved, or understood. This fear is powerful, and it's understandable. No one wants to experience the pain of rejection or abandonment. But here's the truth: when we hide parts of ourselves to protect against rejection, we deny ourselves the possibility of genuine connection. If we do not show up fully, how can we expect someone to love us fully? Love that is based on pretense, on only showing parts of ourselves, is incomplete. It's conditional. But love that is rooted in vulnerability is unconditional. It accepts us in our entirety, flaws and all. Vulnerability is also crucial because it allows for emotional growth. It's easy to remain closed off, to avoid deep emotions or difficult conversations because they make us uncomfortable. But when we choose vulnerability, we open ourselves up to the full range of human experiences: joy, pain, sorrow, and bliss. Without vulnerability, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to learn, grow, and heal. Relationships are not always easy, and love is not always simple. There will be challenges, misunderstandings, and painful moments. But it is in these moments, when we choose vulnerability over defensiveness or avoidance, that we truly grow together. Vulnerability allows us to face our fears, address our wounds, and heal together instead of letting them fester and create distance between us. Many of us have been taught to believe that love is about perfection. We are told that in order to be loved, we must have it all together. Our lives must be neat, our emotions in check, and our faults hidden away. But true love is not about perfection. It's about embracing each other's humanity. True love is messy, complicated, and real. It is accepting the other person as they are, with all of their quirks, flaws, and imperfections. And in order to receive that kind of love, we must be willing to offer the same in return. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we invite the other person to love us as we are, not for the polished version we present to the world, but for the authentic, imperfect human being that we are. Vulnerability also allows us to experience the freedom that comes with being truly loved. When we stop hiding, when we stop pretending, when we stop being afraid of rejection, we create space for unconditional love to flourish. Love that is not dependent on conditions, but on deep acceptance and understanding. This kind of love is freeing because it allows us to simply be who we are without fear of judgment or expectation. It allows us to embrace each other's uniqueness, to celebrate the things that make us different, and to find beauty in the imperfections. It is this freedom, this deep acceptance of one another, that is the foundation of true love. In addition to fostering love, vulnerability is also essential for self-love. It is only by being vulnerable with ourselves that we can fully accept who we are. Self-love is not about perfection or self-judgment. It is about embracing ourselves as we are, with all our flaws, mistakes, and shortcomings. When we are vulnerable with ourselves, we acknowledge our pain, our fears, our doubts, and our desires. We allow ourselves to be human. This self-compassion is the cornerstone of authentic self-love, and it is through self-love that we can fully give and receive love in our relationships. Without self-love, we may seek validation or approval from others, but we will never experience the depth of love that comes from knowing we are enough, just as we are. In relationships, vulnerability is not a one-time event, it is an ongoing practice. It requires courage, trust, and the willingness to be seen in all of our humanness. It is not always easy, and it is not always comfortable. There will be moments when we want to hide, when we want to protect ourselves from hurt. But vulnerability is about showing up, even when it's difficult. It's about leaning into the discomfort, knowing that it is in these moments that we create the deepest, most meaningful connections. True love requires us to be vulnerable, to open our hearts, share our truths, and risk being hurt in the process. But it is this very vulnerability that allows love to flourish, to grow, and to become something beautiful and transformative. When we embrace vulnerability, we embrace love in its purest form. We open ourselves to the possibility of real, authentic connection, and we allow ourselves to experience the depth of love that comes with being fully seen and fully accepted. Vulnerability is not a weakness, it is the key to unlocking the true power of love. Only by being vulnerable, by showing up as our authentic selves, can we experience the deep and transformative love that we all deserve. It is the path to connection, intimacy, and belonging, and it is the path to true love. In a world that celebrates success, achievement, and the pursuit of excellence, it is easy to fall into the trap of perfectionism. Perfection as a goal seems noble. It suggests a standard of excellence that we should all strive for, a way to prove our worth and capabilities. But the reality is that perfection is not only an unattainable ideal, it is also a source of constant anxiety, self-doubt, and fear. Letting go of perfection is not about lowering standards or abandoning goals. It is about releasing the need to control every outcome, to meet unrealistic expectations, and to measure our worth by an impossible standard. It is about embracing imperfection, acknowledging our humanity, and allowing ourselves to be free from the relentless pressure of trying to be perfect. Perfectionism is often rooted in fear. It is a fear of failure, of not being good enough, of being judged or criticized by others. When we strive for perfection, we are trying to protect ourselves from the vulnerability of being seen as flawed or inadequate. We may believe that if we are perfect, we will be loved, accepted, and valued. But this pursuit of perfection often leads to the opposite. It isolates us, creates stress, and prevents us from showing up authentically in our lives and relationships. The need for perfection keeps us from taking risks, from stepping outside our comfort zones, and from fully embracing who we are. The problem with perfectionism is that it creates a moving target. No matter how hard we work, no matter how much we achieve, we are never truly satisfied because perfection is always just out of reach. This constant chase for an unattainable ideal leaves us exhausted and unfulfilled. We may find temporary satisfaction in the illusion of perfection, whether it's a flawless performance, a perfectly organized life, or meeting others' expectations. But this satisfaction is fleeting, and it always comes with the underlying fear of making a mistake, being exposed, or not living up to the ideal we've created for ourselves. Letting go of perfection doesn't mean giving up on striving for excellence or improving ourselves. It's about shifting our perspective from an outcome-based approach to a process-oriented one. It's about allowing ourselves to be human, to make mistakes, and to learn from them. We must recognize that failure is not a reflection of our worth, but an opportunity for growth. When we let go of perfection, we free ourselves from the paralyzing fear of making mistakes, and we open ourselves to the possibility of discovery, creativity, and innovation. In fact, many of the greatest breakthroughs in life and work happen when we embrace imperfection, when we take risks, and when we allow ourselves to fail and try again. Perfectionism can also lead to a sense of shame. When we fail to meet our own or others' expectations, we often internalize that failure, seeing it as a reflection of our inadequacy. We judge ourselves harshly and feel unworthy of love or success. This cycle of shame and self-criticism can create a barrier to self-compassion and acceptance. Letting go of perfection means giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, to fail, and to learn without feeling that we are less than because of it. It is about offering ourselves the same grace and understanding that we would offer to a friend who is struggling. When we stop holding ourselves to impossible standards, we create the space to cultivate self-compassion, to heal from past hurts, and to embrace the messiness of life with love and patience. In our relationships, the pursuit of perfection can also be damaging. We may try to present an image of ourselves that is flawless, hoping to gain approval and admiration from others. But the truth is, no one can live up to this perfect image, and the pressure to maintain it can create a sense of disconnection and isolation. Letting go of perfection in relationships means showing up authentically with all of our flaws, vulnerabilities, and imperfections. It means being real with others and allowing them to see the parts of ourselves that we may otherwise hide. True intimacy and connection can only happen when we are willing to be vulnerable, to reveal the messy, imperfect parts of ourselves, and to accept others in the same way. When we stop pretending to be perfect, we create space for real love, understanding, and connection. Letting go of perfection also allows us to embrace the beauty of imperfection in the world around us. We live in a society that often values smoothness, symmetry, and flawless appearances. But nature, art, and human life are all full of imperfections that make them beautiful and unique. The cracks, the inconsistencies, the flaws, these are what give life its texture and depth. When we let go of perfection, we begin to see the beauty in the imperfections of our lives. We start to appreciate the complexity and richness that comes from being human, from experiencing life in all of its rawness and authenticity. We find that it is in our flaws, our mistakes, and our vulnerabilities that we often discover our greatest strengths and our most meaningful connections. Another aspect of letting go of perfection is the importance of progress over perfection. Perfection often focuses on the end result, the finished product, but life is a continuous journey, and growth happens incrementally. By focusing on progress rather than perfection, we shift our attention from achieving an ideal to making small, meaningful steps toward our goals. This shift allows us to celebrate our progress, no matter how small, and to appreciate the journey rather than only the destination. When we focus on progress, we release the pressure to be perfect and instead focus on being better, learning, and evolving as we go. It is the small changes, the consistent effort, and the willingness to show up each day that lead to true transformation. Letting go of perfection also means letting go of the comparison game. Perfectionism thrives on comparison, on looking at others and measuring ourselves against them. This constant comparison can lead to feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt, as we always seem to fall short of the idealized version of others that we hold in our minds. When we let go of perfection, we stop comparing ourselves to others and begin to embrace our own unique journey. We start to see ourselves as enough just as we are, and we learn to appreciate the individuality that makes us who we are. Each person's path is different, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach to life or success. By letting go of perfection, we free ourselves from the constraints of comparison and allow ourselves to live authentically and true to our own values and goals. Ultimately, letting go of perfection is about embracing the fullness of who we are, our strengths, our weaknesses, our successes, and our failures. It is about accepting that we are worthy, not because we are perfect, but because we are human. And it is about giving ourselves the grace to grow, to fail, and to learn along the way. When we let go of perfection, we step into the fullness of our potential, free from the suffocating pressure to meet impossible standards. We embrace our imperfections, our humanity, and the beautiful mess that is life. It is in this space of imperfection that we find true freedom, growth, and love. In a world that often prioritizes perfection, achievement, and conditional affection, it is easy to forget one fundamental truth: you are worthy of whole love. Whole love is unconditional, unreserved, and unchanging. It does not come with expectations or limitations. Yet so many of us settle for less than this. We convince ourselves that we are only worthy of partial love, affection that is conditional, or love that is given with strings attached. But the truth is that you are worth the whole love, the love that sees you as you are, embraces you fully, and loves you without hesitation. Whole love is a love that does not demand perfection. It is not dependent on what you do or how you perform, but rather on who you are. It sees your flaws, your vulnerabilities, and your weaknesses, and yet still chooses to love you without judgment. This is the love that recognizes you as a whole person worthy of care, respect, and compassion, regardless of your mistakes or imperfections. Too often we believe that we need to earn love, that we must meet certain standards or expectations in order to be deserving of it. This idea is rooted in fear and shame, the belief that we are not enough as we are. But the truth is that love, in its purest form, is not something we have to earn. It is something we already deserve simply by being human. When we allow ourselves to believe that we are worthy of whole love, we begin to let go of the need for validation or approval from others. Whole love does not come with conditions. It is not something that is given based on what we can offer in return. It does not fluctuate based on our achievements or failures. In a world that often tells us that our worth is tied to our accomplishments, relationships, or appearances, it is important to remember that true love is not transactional. Whole love is not about what you can do for someone else or what they can do for you. It is about the deep connection that exists between two people, rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and acceptance. Many of us have experienced relationships where we felt as though we had to give more than we received, or that love was only offered when we met certain conditions. These relationships often leave us feeling depleted, unfulfilled, and unworthy. We start to internalize the belief that we are not enough unless we give more, do more, or change ourselves to fit someone else's expectations. But this kind of conditional love is not whole love. It is incomplete and often leaves us feeling empty. It is in relationships where we feel fully accepted, flaws and all, that we can experience love in its truest, most fulfilling form. One of the most powerful ways to embrace whole love is to begin with self-love. Self-love is the foundation upon which all other love is built. If we cannot love ourselves fully, if we cannot recognize our own worth and value, we will never be able to experience the depth of love that we deserve. Self-love is not about vanity or narcissism. It is about recognizing that you are enough, just as you are. It is about treating yourself with the same compassion, kindness, and respect that you would offer to a loved one. When we learn to love ourselves wholly, we open the door for others to love us in the same way. Whole love begins with us, and it is only when we fully accept ourselves that we can receive the love that we are worthy of. Embracing whole love also means allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is the courage to show up as we truly are, without masks or pretenses. It is the willingness to be seen, to share our true selves with others, and to risk being hurt in the process. Vulnerability is the bridge to deep connection and intimacy. When we are vulnerable, we give others the opportunity to love us in our entirety, our strengths, our flaws, our hopes, and our fears. Vulnerability creates space for authentic, wholehearted love to flourish. When we are willing to be vulnerable, we invite others to love us without conditions, and we begin to understand that we are worthy of love even in our most imperfect, raw, and authentic state. Another key element of receiving whole love is learning to set healthy boundaries. Boundaries are essential to protecting our emotional well-being and ensuring that we are treated with the respect and care we deserve. Whole love does not allow for mistreatment or neglect. It is not about tolerating harmful behavior or allowing others to take advantage of us. Instead, whole love respects and honors our boundaries, and it encourages us to stand up for ourselves when necessary. When we set boundaries, we are saying that we are worthy of love that is respectful, kind, and nourishing. We are communicating that we will not accept anything less than love that treats us with the dignity and care we deserve. Whole love also requires us to let go of the belief that we need to fix or change ourselves to be worthy of love. So often we believe that we must be a certain way to receive love, to be thinner, smarter, more successful, or more agreeable. But love that is based on these conditions is not whole love. It is conditional, transactional, and ultimately unsatisfying. When we embrace whole love, we let go of the need to be perfect. We recognize that our value is not determined by external standards or the approval of others. Instead, our worth comes from within. We are worthy of love simply because we exist. We are worthy of love in our fullness, in our messiness, and in our imperfections. The beauty of whole love is that it allows us to love others deeply and authentically as well. When we recognize our own worth, we are able to see the worth in others. Whole love is not about holding back, about only offering parts of ourselves. It is about being present, being open, and being fully invested in the relationship. It is about giving love freely without fear of rejection or judgment, and receiving love in return without hesitation. Whole love is a reciprocal flow of energy where both people are seen, heard, and valued for who they truly are. It creates a space of mutual respect, trust, and understanding where both individuals are free to be their authentic selves. However, embracing whole love does not mean that we won't face challenges. Relationships, even those based on unconditional love, require effort, patience, and understanding. There will be moments of conflict, miscommunication, and hurt. But when we are committed to whole love, we approach these challenges with compassion and empathy. We recognize that love is not about perfection. It is about growth, learning, and supporting each other through the ups and downs. Whole love thrives in the face of adversity because it is grounded in trust and acceptance rather than expectation and fear. You are worth the whole love, the kind of love that sees you in your entirety and embraces all that you are. This love does not come with conditions or limitations. It is unconditional, pure, and enduring. It is the love that you deserve simply by being you. It begins with self-love, grows through vulnerability, and is sustained by healthy boundaries and mutual respect. Whole love is not perfect, but it is real, and it is the kind of love that nourishes, heals, and transforms. You are worthy of this love, and it is only by recognizing your own worth that you will begin to experience it fully. Love is often portrayed as a beautiful, effortless force that sweeps us off our feet. Yet the reality is that love requires an immense amount of courage. To love fully is not an easy feat. It demands vulnerability, risk, and a willingness to face the unknown. It calls on us to open our hearts, to be seen, and to put ourselves in situations where we may be hurt. But despite the fear and the risk, embracing the courage to love fully is the key to experiencing the depth and transformation that love can bring into our lives. At its core, love is about connection. It is the act of sharing yourself with another, of opening up your heart and mind to create an intimate bond. But to experience this connection, we must first have the courage to show up as our authentic selves. True love can only exist when we are willing to let go of the masks we wear, the pretenses, the defenses, and the fears that prevent us from being fully seen. Love requires us to be vulnerable, to risk rejection, and to expose our deepest selves. It is this vulnerability that creates the space for deep connection, intimacy, and mutual understanding. The courage to love fully means stepping into the unknown. When we enter into a relationship, whether it is with a partner, a friend, or a family member, we cannot predict the outcome. We cannot guarantee that everything will go perfectly, that we will never experience hurt or disappointment. But loving fully means surrendering to the unknown, choosing to give of ourselves without controlling the outcome. It means trusting that even in the face of uncertainty, we can find beauty, joy, and growth. Love does not come with guarantees. It comes with the possibility of connection, of shared experiences, and of creating something meaningful together. In the context of romantic love, the courage to love fully often means facing our deepest fears: fear of rejection, fear of vulnerability, and fear of being hurt. These fears are natural after all. Love exposes us to the possibility of loss, disappointment, and pain. But it is in embracing these fears that we unlock the true power of love. The reality is that without taking the risk of loving fully, we will never know the depth of connection that is possible. When we hold back, when we protect ourselves too much, we limit the potential of the love we can experience. Full love requires us to let go of our guards, to let down the walls we have built to protect ourselves from hurt, and to trust that love, even with all its challenges, is worth the risk. Loving fully also means giving ourselves permission to love in ways that feel authentic to us. There is no one-size-fits-all formula for how to love. Each relationship is unique, and each person brings their own needs, desires, and vulnerabilities to the table. The courage to love fully means being true to ourselves and loving others in ways that align with our values and needs. It means embracing the complexity of love, the moments of joy and sorrow, the times of closeness and distance, the growth and the challenges. Love is not a simple or linear journey. It requires us to show up fully, even in the midst of uncertainty or difficulty. One of the most powerful aspects of loving fully is the ability to embrace imperfection. Love is not about finding someone who meets all of our expectations or checking off every box on our list of qualities. Rather, it is about accepting another person as they are flaws, imperfections, and all. Loving fully means recognizing that we too are imperfect and yet still worthy of love. It means embracing the messy, imperfect nature of relationships and understanding that true love is not about perfection, but about growth, acceptance, and mutual support. The courage to love fully also involves forgiving not only others but ourselves. Love often brings with it misunderstandings, mistakes, and moments of conflict. When we love fully, we open ourselves to the possibility of being hurt, but we also open ourselves to the opportunity for healing and reconciliation. Forgiveness is an essential part of this process. It allows us to move past the pain, to release the hold that resentment or anger might have over us, and to make space for love to grow. Forgiveness is not easy. It requires humility, patience, and a willingness to let go of past hurts. But it is through forgiveness that we make room for love to thrive. To love fully also means embracing the reality that love evolves over time. Love is not static, it grows and changes as we do. In every relationship, there will be seasons of closeness and distance, of ease and challenge. The courage to love fully is the willingness to stay present during these transitions, to accept the natural ebbs and flows of connection, and to continue showing up even when things are difficult. Full love does not require perfection, but it does require commitment, the commitment to weather the storms together, to keep showing up and to choose each other again and again, even when things are not perfect. When we love fully, we also allow ourselves to be changed by the experience. Love has the power to transform us. It opens our hearts, challenges our beliefs, and invites us to grow in ways we never thought possible. The courage to love fully means being open to this transformation, to the ways in which love can expand our capacity for compassion, empathy, and understanding. Loving fully challenges us to be better versions of ourselves, not because we have to, but because love encourages us to be more present, more patient, and more attuned to the needs of those we care about. In order to love fully, we must also be willing to be loved. Often we are more comfortable giving love than receiving it. We may fear being vulnerable or feel unworthy of love, but in order to love fully, we must also open ourselves to receive love without hesitation or doubt. Receiving love is not a sign of weakness, it is a recognition that we are worthy of love, just as we are. When we embrace our own worthiness and allow ourselves to be loved in return, we deepen the bond we share with others and allow love to flow freely in both directions. The courage to love fully is not always easy. It requires us to face our fears, let go of control, and risk vulnerability. But it is in embracing this courage that we discover the true power of love. Love has the ability to heal, to transform, and to create deep, meaningful connections. When we love fully, we experience the fullness of life itself, the highs and lows, the joy and pain, the beauty of being deeply connected to another person. It is not always perfect, but it is real, and it is worth every bit of courage it takes to love with our whole hearts. Embracing the courage to love fully is the key to experiencing the depth, richness, and transformative power of love. It is the key to living a life filled with connection, compassion, and authenticity. In conclusion, embracing the courage to love fully is one of the most transformative and liberating actions we can take in our lives. Love, in its truest form, is not about perfection or meeting unrealistic standards. It is about showing up authentically, being vulnerable, and choosing to give and receive love without hesitation. It requires the bravery to face our fears, the strength to be vulnerable, and the openness to accept both the beauty and challenges that come with deep connection. As we let go of the need for control and perfection, we allow ourselves the freedom to love without conditions. And in doing so, we invite more meaningful, authentic relationships into our lives. True love is messy, imperfect, and sometimes uncertain, but it is also deeply rewarding and transformative. When we embrace the courage to love fully, we not only enrich our own lives, but also create spaces for others to do the same. We become living examples of how love in its fullest expression has the power to heal, to connect, and to inspire. So let us step into this courageous love, knowing that it is through embracing its fullness, vulnerability, and authenticity that we experience the depth of connection we all truly desire.